these days, you can play drums and then you can time align it and get everything sounding perfect. And you can like, though that the vocal is great, but they had this one part was like, oh, I'll just fix it in the computer.
Right.
Or you get it all the way down to, just like one day before it's supposed to be sent out, to Bandcamp or to a label or whatnot, and you can still remix it.
Sweet, dude. I'm Adam, and it's very great to meet you. This is about you and your journey in music, and we'll talk about the record.
Cool.
Sweet. So Keith, first off, where were you born and raised?
I was born in the suburbs of Dallas, or I was born in Dallas, but I was raised in the suburbs, a town called Plano. And
sorry, keep going.
Yeah, well, I mean that's the story. That's right, and I lived there, all the way through high school, until I went to college, and then moved on from there.
Wow, my family's in Plano, or they lived in Plano for a while. Like my mom's side of the family, both my parents are from Ohio, Cleveland area, but for whatever reason, like my mom's parents and a few of her sisters and her brother all moved to Plano like later in life.
It's weird that that a lot of people know what Plano is, because my family goes way back. They were like one of the founding families of Plano, and so like that kind of the Plano now is kind of like not what I knew. And even like when I was in high school, like the high school was gigantic and it was just starting to explode, and that's kind of when I left.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's but it's funny, being here in Brooklyn, New York, and there'll be like a Frito-Lay truck going by, and it says Frito-Lay, Plano, Texas.
Yeah, that's killer, man. So Plano, Texas. Were you born and raised in a musical household at all?
Not at all.
Okay.
Well, I mean, they were my parents both liked music, but there was not any kind of they listened to like church music and that kind of stuff. Most of the stuff was like religious music or inspirational music.
Mm-hmm.
And so I kind of came upon music all on my own, just like with my friends, and and then like listening to the radio and that kind of thing.
Awesome. And what about drums? Was that the first instrument you played?
It is. Yeah, I started playing when I was 10 years old. Because it started out with because I loved Kiss.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It was that's a pretty for guys my age, that was a pretty common thing. It was like, I think when you're 10 years old or 12, whatever, between 10 and 12, it was like Kiss was like superheroes kind of. And so you got to listen to music and kind of see these superheroes, these larger in life guys. And I think I was at the right age to where I'm just like totally buying into that whole thing.
So Kiss made you want to get a drum kit, and was that like you go to your parents and are like, "Can I get a drum set? I want to play like these guys."
Yeah, I'm sure they were not sure what to think of Kiss, especially being very religious and all.
I was gonna say, I'm surprised they didn't tell you couldn't listen to Kiss. It's like Detroit Rock City.
Yeah. It's to their credit, they never put the brakes on in any direction that I went. And even if it was music they didn't like or music they didn't understand, they were 100% supportive, like throughout the whole time. And I mean, even to the point, like where I'm like bashing away after school, and my dad's come home from work and he's trying to watch TV, and and I have on my headphones and I'm listening to Kiss Alive 1 and playing along, and I would get done playing and I would go into the living room and wonder why my dad had the TV blasting so loud.
Oh, because he was just trying to drown out your drums.
Yeah. And then I have, like friends and stuff that live down the street, and, people like let me know, like, yeah, we could hear you 5 houses down,
That's
like
funny.
bashing away on stuff. So, I mean, I was lucky that it's supportive parents and the neighbors were cool with it and all that. So, yeah, it was like, it was pretty nice.
Did you learn did you have lessons or anything, or did you just try to play along to some of your like the Kiss
I
records or whatever?
well, I kind of had it was I was kind of taking two roads at once because my parents knew I liked drums, and I got a drum set before I got into school band,
Oh,
and
cool.
I went through all the school band, and I went to college, and I got a music degree. And
Like the
so
marching band, were you like the snare or
yeah,
percussion or okay?
I was the section leader of the marching band in my college for 3 or 4 years.
Wow.
Yeah, 3 years. And yeah, so I studied. I got a music. I was like studying to be an orchestral percussionist, and at the same time, I was always playing drum set and playing in rock bands and playing in pop bands or whatever there was, all cover bands, all the way through college. And so I was like on basically, a very studied path, and then a path where you're just like putting on the headphones and trying to figure out, like what Neil Peart was playing.
Right, right. Okay, that's awesome. Did you join like when you were in high school and stuff? Was that kind of your first bands like with aside from being in the marching band or orchestral band? Did you
Yeah,
join
yeah,
like
I
rock
had
bands in
buddies.
high school?
Yeah, I had buddies that I played with, and I never really like gigged until I got into college. And but yeah, we had a neighborhood band, and we, friends in the neighborhood, they would come over to my house because that's where the drum set was, and my parents let them come over and make racket, and yeah, I think one time we played one seventh grade dance, and we were in the 4th of July parade, and it was like a big deal and all that kind of stuff.
Wow. What style were you guys?
We were doing covers like I remember we played like Smoke on the Water and Come Together by the Beatles.
Oh, okay.
That's maybe Slow Ride by Foghat.
Yeah, yeah.
That I don't know. Yeah, I think we knew like a handful of songs.
That's cool. And then you go to college. You wanted to, what was like kind of the end goal? You said you wanted to be in or like conduct an orchestra there, or you wanted to be in
Well, I didn't know what I wanted to do, and my
oh,
parents were like, "Well, you like music. Do you want to study music?" And like I had just no clue, and so I was just like, "Yeah, I'll do music." And so, but I wasn't sure what that entailed. But
right.
basically, I was learning to be a percussionist who would play in the orchestra, and
Okay.
that's like learning like concert snare drum, learning the marimba, and
Uh-huh.
uh, and all the timpani, all that kind of stuff. And so I was doing that, and I was playing in the jazz band, and yeah, that kind, all the kind of what's called legit percussion.
Got it. And did you go to school in Texas or did you
I did.
move?
It's a small school in East Texas called Stephen F. Austin State
Okay.
University.
And
And,
that's where you played in their band and everything as
yeah.
well?
Hmm.
And you said that was when you started to gig as well as when you're in college.
Right. I had a band in college, and we had the local bar, and we played covers like like pop and rock covers of the day.
And was that the like at what moment did you decide like, this is kind of what the path I want to take aside from maybe being more in the trained percussion realm to more of like I want to be in a band.
Well, it was actually kind of two things dawned on me. It's like in the percussion, the classical percussion world, like if you're going to work, there's symphony openings around the world, and those are advertised. But for a percussionist, there's only a handful of openings a year, because once people get in those, they generally stay. And you can
Oh,
stay
they don't
forever.
leave. Yeah.
And so I knew that there was just going to be a handful of openings, and I knew those guys that were going to get those openings were guys that loved it. And I enjoyed it, and I liked learning it, but I didn't live it and love it like you have to in that world. And and that wasn't in me. And then and also you graduate college, and all of a sudden you don't have a $12,000 marimba to practice on, or a $20,000 set of timpani to practice on. But I got a drum set, and I can put that in my car and I can go down to the bar and play with my buddies. And that's always where my heart really was. And so, yeah, the day after we graduated college, my band that was there in the town is called Nacogdoches, Texas. The day after I graduated, our band moved to Austin.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah.
And were you guys playing originals at this point, or still doing just covers?
No, it was all covers.
Okay. And when do you start or join your first band of original material? Was it in Austin?
Yeah, the band that I moved to Austin with from Nacogdoches, that lasted for about a year, and we were playing covers. In Austin, there's a street called 6th Street, which back then it was like cool and safe, and there was like literally a live band in every single door. It was like,
Oh wow. It's
I
not
mean,
the
it was
same.
like,
I've heard about machetes and other things
yeah,
going
it's
on
kind
in
of
there, but
crazy, and it's a lot of shot bars and DJs and
oh, okay.
that kind of vibe. But back then it was like I wouldn't load out my drums out of one club, that's because the next day I was going to be playing next door. So, when we loaded in, I just walked my drums, next door or across the street rather than load them all up and put them in my car. But
Oh, you could just leave them at the next club for the next night.
yeah,
Yeah, nowadays it'd be gone.
yeah, it was everything was like totally chill back then. It was like, it was fun. Everybody knew each other, and yeah, so that was cool. And like so the band that I was playing with, that lasted for about a year. Then I joined another cover band, and then that cover band became an original music band. And we were at that time, it was like I don't know, like it was kind of like the era of rock with like the Red Hot Chili Peppers and the Spin Doctors and that kind of
Okay.
thing. So we had it was a rock band, but like with a funk bass player, and we were playing like funky grooves and that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. And you guys just kind of played around Austin at that point?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
So
you're in New York now, right?
I am. Yeah.
Yeah. So how long did you stay in Austin? And did that band last for a while? Like what was the next
Well,
step?
I guess what happened, we never got any traction doing anything. I mean, it was cool playing around town, and we had some pretty decent gigs, but basically kind of the first like traveling gig that I got was through my girlfriend at the time. Her hairdresser's boyfriend was a guitar player,
Mhm.
and with this blues piano player named Marcia Ball, and they were looking for a drummer, and he said, well, why don't we get Keith? And so Marcia auditioned me, just me and her, and so I joined the Marcia Ball band. And in the blues world, she's well known. She's been nominated for Grammys many times, won many blues music awards. And so I joined her band, and I like literally knew nothing about playing blues music, nothing about playing like New Orleans second line music. And so they had to finish up a tour with their previous drummer. So I had the gig for like 3 weeks, I think, before I actually started playing. And I had never heard any of her music. And,
Yeah.
and it was like a deal to where, back then there wasn't Spotify where you can just listen to everything. It was like I was gonna have to go to the store and shell out $20 a CD to buy her whole like back catalog. And I was like, I don't have that kind of money to do that.
Yeah, to try to go then take that home and listen to it and learn it. Did you just
Yeah.
end up going and watching the other drummer play to kind of
No,
get a
well,
feel for it?
they were out touring, so I didn't
Oh,
even.
they're gone. Okay.
Yeah, and it was funny because there was people that go, "Oh, it's so great you're playing with Marsha," because it was a big deal, and they're like, "This is my favorite song, and this is my favorite song," and I'm like, "I've never heard those songs." And so finally, when she came back, she gave me like a cassette tape, as people did back then,
Uh-huh.
and she didn't give me one, I think, beforehand, because we did this audition. I think they left out the next day. So basically, I got the gig and I had the tape, and there was no rehearsals. And we fly out, and we're playing a private party in Phoenix. And I don't know anyone in the band, and everybody has separate hotel rooms. And the hotel room was bigger than my apartment in Austin. And no one's talking to each other. Like I don't even know what's going on. And it was
Yeah.
just, and that's the kind of the thing with Marcia. She was I mean, there's no one better to work for than Marcia Ball. She was just great. And so but it was always like making things just like, just follow me, just follow me. And I learned how to, become a blues drummer, just by learning on the gigs. And, we were doing shows with, Buddy Guy and Gatemouth
Wow.
Brown and so there was a little bit of an imposter syndrome. I felt there, like, like, what am I doing here? Like, like talking backstage with Booker T and it's like
Yeah.
crazy.
You kind of
But
got dropped into like as your first real touring band. I mean, you're playing with this massive artist. Like that's kind of a wild experience to have.
yeah, yeah, it was great. And if she, and there was, and I think the learning curve was pretty steep. And there, I remember that we were playing one gig outside of Chicago, and I was just sure I was getting fired after that gig. I was just like, it was so terrible. But once I kind of got over, I think it was at that gig, it's like, okay, this is terrible. I need to like figure out what's going on. And it made some adjustments, and it was just great from there on. And so even so, like, to this, when Marcia's in town, I always try to go see her. And she, like, I think last time I saw her, she was playing at the Iridium, and great as usual, and a
That's
lot of fun.
awesome.
Yeah.
How long did you play with her for?
For about 2 years,
Okay.
and it would have been a lot longer, but I got an offer to play with this country singer named Charlie Robinson from Texas, who's in Texas. He's kind of like one of the Texas music country giants.
Okay.
And they were trying to make him one of the next national country music stars. He had signed on a major label, and it was tough to leave Marcia, but it was a deal to where, like, if things happened for him, he would be like a star and like be playing arenas and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And the way that, I grew up, with listening to arena rock bands, like Journey and Van Halen and Genesis, and so I wanted to play the big places, and I thought it was a great opportunity to do that.
Yeah, definitely. And then did you do that for a while before moving then to New York
I did.
or?
Yeah, I played with Charlie for, I think, 7 or 8 years. And so
Wow. Yeah. So you
he
really,
had
yeah.
his he had his like, he tried the major label thing, and it was that year, the three big stars that were supposed to break out uh, of Nashville and become like household names were Blake Shelton, Brad Paisley, and Charlie Robinson. And of course, the first two went on to be gigantic, and it didn't work out as well for Charlie. And he gave it a good shot, but we didn't. He didn't like really play by, Nashville. You really kind of have to play by the rules to get everything working, all all the wheels rolling in the same direction. And I think it just wasn't his thing. So he went back to Texas, and he could play way bigger places in Texas. And
Mhm.
rather than going out on the road, like with Brooks and Dunn or Travis Tritt, who were the big stars at the time. Like, we did that, but we would, we do our set before then. But when we played in Texas, we were playing to gigantic crowds, and he could make more money in Texas. And so he just kind of left the national thing behind. But, it was, it was great. We played, got to play the Ryman Auditorium at the Grand Ole Opry. And
Wow.
another thing, like, or I'm sitting on stage about to go on, and I'm like, what am I doing here? Like, I was like standing in the wings ready to go on, and Porter Wagner standing next to me, and Marty Stewart standing next to me. And I'm like, the guy that was like listening to Kiss and Rush when I was a kid is like, why am I standing, in the
The Ryman.
Right. It was, yeah, it was pretty crazy, and it was a cool experience. But yeah, so anyway, I did that with Charlie for, we played around Texas and all that stuff. And that band was a lot of fun to play with. And the band was unique, I thought, and a good group of guys. And but it just ended up, we started playing less and less and less. And so that's what I left the band, and I hung around Austin just playing with local bands and doing like smaller, just like, 4 and 5 day run kind of
Mhm.
tours, and then moved to New York.
And is that where you met the other guys to form, the current project?
Yeah, for Tanith.
Yeah, for Tanith.
Yeah,
Did you meet in New York?
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I've been in New York, I don't know, now for 13 years, and I guess we met Cindy and Russ. Kind of an interesting story that kind of ties all this background together. The I had a friend in Austin. I used to work at a drum shop in Austin, and I had a friend that came in, and and he was another drummer, and we just became buddies because he'd come in the drum shop, and then he moved to New York probably 10 years before I did.
Mhm.
And he was playing around and that kind of thing, and then I moved up to New York, and he was one of the only guys that I knew, and after like doing a lot of tours and that kind of stuff, he decided he wanted to play bass and learn bass as something new and different, some maybe a new avenue to get some new work. And so he played bass, and he invited me one night or one afternoon to do. We were doing like Waylon and Willie kind of covers, Texas country music covers at a barbecue place in the afternoon. And a friend of his and her boyfriend came to see us play. And that friend and boyfriend were Cindy and Russ, who are in Tanith. And
Yeah.
so they came and saw me play this country gig. And then afterwards they were like, like, we're looking for someone to like be the drummer in our metal band. And I was like, uh, did you see what I just did? I was playing like On the Road Again,
Yeah, some country
it's
songs.
like, and with brushes. Um, but anyway, but I did have that the rock background and stuff. It was just a different kind of thing. But yeah, so because I met a friend in the early 90s in Austin, I ended up being in a metal band in Brooklyn, like however many years later, 25 years later.
Wow. And you guys started in what, 2017? Is that what I saw?
Yeah. Hmm.
Okay. And so how quickly, like, I mean, you joined that band, that must have been totally different than obviously the what you were playing before, from everything from the music style to maybe the stages you were playing and everything else.
Yeah, it's, I mean, I would, it's yeah, I mean, since we've been talking about what I've done, I started out playing cover bands, and then played in a blues band, then played in a country band, and and then before I met up with them, I was playing with like some soul bands and other rock bands, and I was mixing EDM, and I was, so I've had my hands in a lot of different styles, and it was just like when this, kind of metal thing came up, it was like, okay, that's will be the next thing, and I'll,
Yeah, an
get in
avenue
it.
you hadn't been down yet, really.
Right, and and like it's, a little of it has been, some learning on the job, kind of, because it is a different style. Just like had to learn how to do different country things, and had to learn how to do different blues things. It's I mean, it's all rock music, at some point, but then there's like, it all kind of like has its idiosyncrasies.
Mhm. And you guys just released, or you're releasing a record tomorrow, right? The album's coming out
Yeah.
tomorrow, and it's on Metal Blade. Is that a new venture for you all, getting signed to that label?
Well, what the way that happened is that so Russ and Cindy hired me as a studio drummer to play on their a single, a song called Citadel, and they released it actually as a 45, with a B-side and that whole thing. And so I just we went in it to record 2 songs. They put those songs on Bandcamp, and someone, a representative from a Metal Blade in Germany, heard the song, loved it, and signed the band.
Oh,
And
really?
yeah, it's like kind of like one of those stories that you always hear, like they picked us out of a crowd of thousands, and it really was kind of like that. And so we had to write more songs. They asked me to become a member of the band, and then we made our first record, and it went over pretty well, and
Mhm.
it made a lot of different metal, like album of the year kind of stuff, and top 10 of the year. And then we went on tour for that record, and like in Germany and the UK and Belgium and Holland, show in Greece. And so we're
Had
all
you,
excited.
yeah, had you played abroad like that before with other bands that you're in?
No, I played in England some, and I think I didn't, yeah, maybe like in England and Scotland, but I had not ever played in Germany and played yeah, any of those other places. It's, you know,
And
it's
they
fun.
love metal, right?
Yeah,
In a lot of
that's
those European countries.
yeah, that's where most of the most of our biggest fan base is in Germany, and in Europe. I mean, we do have fans in the States and that kind of stuff, but everything uh is kind of geared more towards Europe.
Yeah, I've noticed that with a lot of metal bands that it really hits there. Not that
Yeah,
it doesn't here in the States, but it's like another level when you go out. So,
yeah, it is. It is. And
yeah.
that, yeah, they're just, you know, and they can't get enough of it. It was not, you know, with Spotify and, you know, and people then, you know, being on the label, people got to hear the record before we went there. So whenever we played, and whether it's at a bigger festival or a smaller club, like the people knew the words to the songs already, you know, like, which, you know, was kind of surprising, like, you know, to show up at a gig in Athens, Greece, and people are all like singing the lyrics, you know, back to you. Um, that
That's
was something I
exciting.
didn't expect. And so, yeah, so we're all excited with that. And we're like, oh, okay, we got to do, you know, maybe do some more touring and get this next record out. And that's when COVID hit and it just shut everything down.
Oh, wow. So is this album something you guys were working on right after that? I mean, like 2020, or did you have to put the writing process or even anything towards this new album on pause for a while?
It was, well, it went, it was a lot of, we started writing the songs like emailing parts back and forth, and, you know, like using WeTransfer and sending files and kind of building that songs. I'm down here. Usually there's a drum set back here, but I moved it out for our gig tonight. But I
Oh,
have a
okay.
studio here, so I can, you know, I can record drum parts and I can send it back to England where Russ lives. And so we basically put the album together kind of through email. And like we didn't get to see each other. The whole band was not in the same room for over 2 years.
Oh, wow.
And so when we came together to record this new record, it was like, you know, it was like we did it like last August, I think. And that was the first time, like literally, like I had seen Russ in over 2 years.
Oh my gosh. But you were obviously sending songs back and forth, or was that all just demos that you guys put together and
Yeah.
then went into the studio to record it all
Yeah,
properly?
yeah, kind of a deal with our band is that we it's kind of like a 70s style rock, and we record it that way. So like there's no computers involved at all. We record the tape.
No way.
We recorded tape, and then we mixed the tape, the 2-inch tape to a 1/2-inch tape, and then to go get it mastered, we're actually carried like 6 boxes of tapes on the train to Peekskill, New York, where Master Disc is. And he masters the tape, you know, he's direct to a lacquer master.
Really?
Yeah, and so there's no computers
There's no
involved.
digital. Yeah.
Right. If you have the album, which I got right here.
Nice. I saw the Instagram video of you all opening it up.
Yeah. We like if you have that album, none of that has touched a computer at all. Like obviously it had to be digitized to go to Spotify and to be pressed into CDs and that kind of thing. But the vinyl, it's all analog. And so, you know, like we're sending stuff back and forth email, but we knew, I mean, that's not how the band records. We thought that maybe that was something we should consider since it had been so long, but in the end decided just to go back to the way that we usually do things, and, you know, like having a 70s style hard rock heavy metal band and record that way, you know, and use vintage amps and vintage gear and vintage everything to try to capture that sound.
Wow. And that's not something people are doing nowadays, especially it's expensive to do tape.
It is.
And I mean, obviously you are a pro and you've been doing it for a long, long time, but if this is your first stint in the studio, tape would be, it could get pricey.
Well, it can, because you can't, with tape, you can't fix things like,
Or punch in, yeah, so to speak.
you can't, and like even, like these days, you can play drums and then you can time align it and get everything sounding perfect. And you can like, though that the vocal is great, but they had this one part was like, oh, I'll just fix it in the computer.
Right.
Or you get it all the way down to, just like one day before it's supposed to be sent out, to Bandcamp or to a label or whatnot. And you can still remix it. You can, oh, I don't like that snare drum, but so you can fix it and email,
Yeah.
to,
Yeah.
but with tape, you kind of
That's
get
it.
like drums, you don't really get to cut in, because if there's no undo, if you try to punch something and you didn't notice that cymbal crash, is going, psh,
Bleeds into the other microphone, then you're screwed.
yeah, then you got to re-record the whole thing. And so it's a different, just with no undo, you have to decide things all on the front end rather than decide things once everything's there. And so,
Interesting.
yeah, so it's a different mindset. And in the end, I think it gives our music a little bit more of a human quality, because it hasn't been fixed. It's like,
Mhm.
if what you hear is like what we played. And
Right. Yeah.
and
Eh,
there was no like going back and, and doing some computer Pro Tools wizardry to fix it. It's just like, so there are like little things here and there. And but when I go back and I listen to like old Led Zeppelin records or old Boston records or whatnot, I mean, part of the charm of them is that there might be these little mistakes that you hear in there, but it reminds you, it's like, that's four people in a room playing music.
right.
It's not someone who's like taken this and then they've made something else out of it.
Right. Yeah, I love the kind of like the grit to it and like the little imperfections. It just,
Yeah,
yeah, it's something like it like humanizes it a little bit more than,
yeah.
oh, you screwed up that vocal. Don't worry, I'll just go in and like auto tune and fix the pitch a little bit here, and then it'll be perfect. Don't worry
I have done that in my studio many times.
about it.
And
Yeah.
and if you have it, it's hard not to use that,
Right.
because you can also like, and if things are running late, and like everybody's tired, you can say, okay, just give me this vocal and like just do it, and then I'll fix it tomorrow and everything will be cool. Where, like when you do our way, it's like, is that something you want to live with the rest of your life? Then,
Mhm.
we may need it may be another hour of takes to get it, just the way you want it to be. And it's still not be 100% perfect, but it might be like, that's what perfect was for that day. And
Right.
and yeah, so it's like, it's cool to do that after all these years of, with Pro Tool. Like when I started, I'm old enough that I started on tape and then like went to Pro Tools and all that kind of stuff. And so it's nice to go back and record to tape again.
That's cool. That's really, yeah, definitely something not a lot of people are doing nowadays.
Right. Yeah. There's hardly anyone doing what we're doing.
Yeah, I think that's awesome that there's still spaces that you can do that, right? You can record to tape and that it'll
Right.
press it right to a vinyl.
Right. It's a it's a lost art. And and especially, it's like, I mean, here myself, I got a decent studio in my basement. I can go to Pro Tools and all that kind of stuff. And the people, a lot of people can do stuff at home. And so to go to a studio that has tape, that for them to still offer that, there's a lot of upkeep and there's just to keep those machines running, because they don't really make, I don't think, new tape machines. These are all things from the 70s and stuff that like got to be repaired and like, shipped off to get things, parts for and that kind of thing. So a lot of people are just like, it's just not worth it anymore. And so there's less and less tape studios anywhere.
Yeah, it's like the brick and mortar aspect of like having all the stuff and the equipment and or you could have just a laptop, right? Or like in
Right.
a few mics. It's just such a wild thing. But I love this that I love the, that there's just a feel and a sound to those recordings and having it done that way. That's
Yeah,
you
yeah,
can't
in
replicate
the
it
end,
on a
you know,
computer.
when you're holding a record and you made it like in an honest way, and you know, and you put it on, you know, to hold your own album, and you know, and to drop the needle on it, you know, the same way I did like with those Kiss records, when you know, or listening to Rush or listening to Van Halen. uh you know, it's exciting to like, you know, like we made a record just like they made records back then.
That's
You
awesome.
know, it's a cool process.
For sure. Well, Keith, thank you so much, man, for hanging out with me today. I appreciate your time.
Yeah, man, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, I do have one more question for you before I let you go. I want to know if you have any advice for aspiring artists.
Hmm. Don't do it. Um, yeah, well, I mean, it is. The music business has changed so much. It's a hard thing to do. Um, I would say what I would have done different. Like I spent a long time like playing covers and trying to make money as I went along, like starting out. And I think if I was to do it again, I would try more to do like my own music and make my own way, and write my own songs, and that, you know, and do that in as honest a way that you could do it, and not try to be like the flavor of the month, or you know, like I was saying that the one of my bands, you know, I was like the big thing was to sound like the Red Hot Chili Peppers, so that's what we were doing, or you know, like, or trying to be, you know, the next grunge band or whatnot. um yeah, I would say, you know, like I would write and be a part of the writing of the music, which I, as a drummer, I hardly ever was, you know, and that's an income stream that like I'll never have. You know, some guy, like if you write a hit, then you're going to be making, you know, sometimes it's not a great amount of money, but you know, as a songwriter, you'll get a check from ASCAP here and that kind of thing. So be a part of the songwriting, and practice. If you want to be a side guy, um, they're always going to go for the best one available. And like you might be good enough to be in a band, but you know, they're always, if some bigger act is going to look for someone in your town, you know, they're not going to go for the 10th guy down. They're going to go for the first guy. And if, you know, and keep going down from there. So, you know, really work at being good at what you do, and write the music that you want to write, and be a part of that, the songwriting.
Bringing it backward.